CSP อย่างไรบ้างนะครับรวมไปถึงเรื่องของความเปลี่ยนแปลงที่เกิดขึ้นกับแนวทางที่เราจะเตรียมตัวสอบ CSP นะครับก็เดี๋ยวระหว่างนี้นี่จะขอเวลาอีกสักประมาณ 2-3 นาทีนะครับเพื่อให้ทุกท่านเข้ามาพร้อมๆกันนะครับเราจะเริ่มประมาณบ่าย2:05 นาทีนะครับเพื่อให้ทั้ง Zoom แล้วก็ Facebook Live นะครับทุกท่านที่จะมาจอยนี้ก็จะได้มาพร้อมหน้าพร้อมตาแล้วเดี๋ยวเราจะเริ่มกันเลยนะครับเดี๋ยวเจอกันตอนบ่าย2:05 นาทีนะครับครับสวัสดีทุกท่านครับผมพลอากาศตรีอมรชมเชยนะครับแล้วก็วันนี้ก็ขอต้อนรับสู่รายการพิเศษของเราครับที่เราได้จัดร่วมกับทาง IC2 Bangkok Chapter ครับซึ่งจริงๆแล้วต้องนับรวมว่ามีทาง IC2 Western Australia Chapter joining us as well. Okay, so for this special occasion, we have special guest speaker from IC2 Western Australia chapter joining in. Okay. So first, let me explain a little bit for the agenda in Thai and then in English. Okay. So we start around 14:05. I will provide a short introduction about this program and what we're trying to do in terms of improve the cybersecurity posture and also human workforce development for Thailand. Okay. And then I will introduce our honorable guest speakers, Mr. Robert Lowry, and then he will discuss about what will be the changes for the current CISP exam and also how to prepare you and your group or your team to pass the exam. Okay. And after that, we will have some Q&As and discussion and some closing remark from our chairman of IC Square Bangkok chapter. Yeah. So let me discuss a little bit about what we are trying to do in Thailand right now. Okay. In terms of Cybersecurity Act, we ask a lot from the CAI, Critical Information Infrastructure Organization, and also from the government organization to improve their cybersecurity posture according to the law. But it's very difficult if you don't have the manpower with the expertise and the level of competence. Okay. So one of the first thing for NCSA, our organization, trying to do is to improve human capacity in terms of numbers and the level of expertise. Okay. So far, we have educated Thai people in you might call it reskill and upskill for about 3,000. And then they will take the CompTIA Sec Plus exam or ECSS or even Pentest Plus and CISA Plus. Okay. But that will be for the operation level. We need more management level. Okay. That's why right now we have CISP candidates that we have select the best 60 persons out of 1,200. So that after the education that they have, we have provided 5-day official courses for all 60 persons. And then about the 9th of September, we'll have intensive tutorial for them. And this today here, we provide them with even better guidance from our guest speaker that have the experience to prepare the group and teaching the class that have about 95% rate of success in taking CISP exam. Okay, so don't miss out on any part of his speech and enjoy his speech. Let me give a short introduction about our guest speakers. Okay, he has a professional background in enterprise security architecture and government information system, and also the software development. He has many roles right now. For example, the security architect for David Linux Consulting, and he also the deputy CISO for University of New England, and board member for SAPSA Institute, deputy chair for AISA West Australia branch, and also ISC2 West Australia chapter founder. Okay. And of course, he is the official IC2 instructor. So please help me give me a warm welcome for Mr. Robert Rory. Okay, so continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Amon. Thank you very much for the introduction. Let me just share my screen. Okay, the last thing, I think you introduced most of the things on the slide, but the last thing, I'm a scuba diver. So I love scuba diving. I've come to the right place, I think. So I look forward to some scuba here. But what I'm talking about today is, well, I've got an agenda slide here. So our agenda is going to cover two parts, two pieces. We're going to talk about the updates to CISSP exam that happened in May 2021. Now, most of us were locked down during COVID during this time, and maybe we didn't notice that the syllabus was updated. It was last updated in 2018. So there's a significant change that we need to understand, and this is particularly useful if you've already been studying and you're studying maybe the older materials. You might have some issues when you come to sit the exam because the materials have been updated. So we'll go through the update first, and I'll give you some of my own feelings about the update, because I've already taught maybe about 100 people over the last year through this course, through the new May syllabus. So then we will move on to how can you get this 95% pass rate. And this pass rate is ISC2 do not tell us how many people pass. They don't give us the data. It's a privacy issue. But what we do have is the information from our study groups. So we know who has passed and who has not passed. And so that's how we come to the 95%. So we're going to take a little scuba dive, and that's what the scuba divers are doing in the screen. We are going to take a little dive into the May 2021 syllabus for CISSP. So the first question is, why does the exam change? Why would it change at all? The thing is that the exam needs to keep step with our industry, and our industry is moving very quickly. So we need to make sure that the exam maintains its value by being up to date. So it will help us, and it will help the ISC2 as well, because the course will be more relevant to the threats and the vulnerabilities and the impacts we see today. So the exam is updated using something called job task analysis. So all of the CISSPs in the room here and those online, you will have received an email already once you've got your certification that would have asked you what's important, how can we change the course to keep it updated. And so the changes in the course are a result of the industry body, you, me, everybody working together to keep the materials updated and current. The good news is, if you get involved with the job task analysis, then you can claim 21 CPEs. What's a CPE? Once you have your CISSP, once you have your credential, you must maintain it by continuously studying. So you must keep your skills up to date, and that might mean going to webinars, it might mean going to presentations like this, it might mean going to a conference, doing some study or presenting. But one way or another, we need to earn around 30 hours of CPEs, and one CPE equates to essentially 1 hour of study or work. So we do this because whilst we're updating the course, we need to make sure that ourselves, that we're updating our skills permanently. So what are let's move on to what are the changes since May 2021. So the updated exam guideline has been issued. It's on the website. It's called the CISSP Domain Refresh Guide, and that is a really good study resource. We'll have a look at it in a moment, but if you haven't already seen this and the CISSP exam outline, make sure you read it at least twice before you sit the exam. Once when you start studying, and once when you finish studying. The exam outline includes the scoring information. It shows you the domain weights. For instance, one of the domains, communications and network, has had a decreased weighting, while another area, software development, which is a hot topic at the moment, has an increased weighting. So we need to know what those weightings are so that we can adjust how much we study in each of the domains. If it's a point less, then we study a little less. If it's a point more, we study a little more. So here's a copy of the Domain Refresh Guide. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the old syllabus that was from 2018, and you can see the new syllabus that was effective in May 2021. And there are some changes here in this domain. Not a great deal, but there are some changes. So it's really, really valuable to get this Domain Refresh Guide. Make sure you've seen it before the exam and understand if there's any differences. It's really important if you've been studying for more than a year or two, because you may have been studying the earlier materials. And while they're still accurate, there's been some changes. And we don't really want you to, if you're studying for the exam, I don't want you to go off the path. Stay on the path, study the content in the syllabus, complete the exam. Yes, I'm more than happy for you to go off and review other materials, but for this talk, we're just talking about passing the CISSP exam. So a little bit of information about the computer adaptive testing. So many of us who have already obtained our CISSP would have done through the old system. It could have been on paper back in the day, or it could have been online, but not the adaptive testing. You'll know if you did that because your exam was 6 hours long. And I did the 6-hour exam, and we took food. I mean, I had to pack a chicken sandwich and some chocolates and a can of coffee because in the 6-hour exam, you actually needed to plan your day. And I really liked that. I thought it was part of the rite of passage because in the real world, if you have a cyber incident, you don't go home after an hour and a half. You don't get that luxury. 6 hours minimum and cold pizza. So the adaptive testing, though, is being brought out by ISC2 because it works better with our busy lifestyle. Some of us can't afford 6 hours. We cannot find that in our busy schedules. So the smaller exam of a maximum of 3 hours, but actually there's a minimum, which is about 100 minutes or an hour and a half or so. And that's because the adaptive testing tests, it gives you an easy question, and if you pass that, it makes the question harder and harder and harder until you can't pass it, and then it backs off the difficulty. And it's actually playing this algorithm behind the scenes. You're answering questions, but it's actually choosing them on a specific pattern. And what this means is that it can get a better idea if you're going to pass the exam sooner. So within about an hour or about 100 minutes, if you're an ace, if you're really good, if you've listened to my study suggestions and you're going to get that 95%, the exam will terminate after about 100 minutes. It'll just close on you. And I've spoken to some of my students, and they say it's always a shock when the exam closes, because after 100 minutes, you know you've either done very well or very poorly. And you don't know which until they give you the letter. So it can be an exhilarating time and a little stressful. But they will nevertheless hand you a provisional letter immediately after that exam, which is great. And I remember jumping for joy on my first, second, and third certifications with ISC2. It's a nice feature that they have that many other certifications don't give you an immediate answer. You have to wait. So why did ISC2 change the course? We found when we were teaching the previous course, and these bullet points are from a jamboree, a group meeting we had with 250 ISC2 trainers from across the globe, and it was pretty noisy. Getting that many security people in a room is noisy, even a virtual room. But we discussed what was wrong with the course, and we said there was no clear build-up. The path for the course was back and forth a bit. Because we were studying each domain at a time, an element, a cybersecurity concept might be present in multiple domains. Because we were doing one domain at a time, we would come across that concept many times. And I used to tell my students, if you see the slide more than once, it's important. And people picked that up. And so what we found is that people were memorizing the slides, particularly those that came up so regularly, and they weren't going and reading the background. They weren't reading the information behind the scenes. And so we needed to update the course to get rid of maybe all the bullet points and start talking in diagrams and architectural concepts rather than just bullet points. They also, ISC2 thought that there was a lot of textual data, a lot of reading that was hard to digest. And if you've got the ISC2 volumes or the online version of that document, it's scary how much content is there. The instructor's guide is, half a foot thick. They actually, it would always break around the crypto chapter. When you got to chapter 4, the book was so big, it would break in half and somewhere in the middle of crypto, which is the worst place for it to break. So in the new version, the instructor's guide is actually 2 separate books. But your version is an online version, which is obviously just one book still. So the new structure tried we tried to, or ISC2 tried to rearrange it so that the basic concepts were discussed first, and we could stand on those and keep adding more value rather than jumping back and forth. So we start with the basic concepts and we build on them. We present the domains in a slightly different way. We present them through chapters. So the book has 9 chapters, or 10 including the review. And the chapters actually present multiple domains. So we don't do a domain lineage, we do a sort of more of a chapter flow. And that makes things a much more logical, and we don't revisit the same topics again and again. We try and focus on stimulating the learning, not lunch, as the case is for the physical classes. We really want to help people understand the concepts rather than memorize the data that's in there. They've tried to make the language a little simpler, mixed results there, and a little more international, and that's great to see because a lot of the earlier work or a lot of the earlier questions in the exam talked about feet and inches, or the old imperial scales, or how many candle power brightness a torch should be. These are foreign terms to us. Give me lumens, give me meters, give me centimeters. So they've tried to internationalize the language a little more, which is good. There's some more work to be done there. The last point here, a little sad face. I love the history, and this is my first pro tip here. When you're studying CISSP, try and enjoy the history behind it. Everything we do in cybersecurity almost always can be traced back to NORAD and the Cold War. That is where most of the concepts we've discussed in the CISSP actually were born. And so it's fascinating to go back and read the history behind these things. The Diffie-Hellman key exchange sounds boring, but go and look at why it was developed, and that's quite a lot more interesting. And if you can build a passion for interest around this, then you're no longer studying, you're watching TV, you're having fun. It's like watching Netflix, you're enjoying it. So the first key tip is try and enjoy the history. And so they say there's less history here, and it's true. There's less history in the slides, but we still have a lot of history, particularly around cryptography, in the book. And I really enjoy that. That's the fun bit for me, is to find out where it all came from. How did we get here? So little update too on the online proctor exams. So many certifications are doing proctored exams. My university does proctored exams online as well. Unfortunately, ISC2 did 2 separate studies into whether the proctored exams could work for CISSP, particularly over the COVID period, because that's when everybody was studying or working from home. What they found is they did the test in the US, the UK, and Singapore. They found a lot of inconsistencies. And they had a base group, a control group, also running in physical classes, and there were no inconsistencies in the physical classes. So unfortunately, they've said that the online exams don't satisfy their standards, and whilst they're still interested in providing online proctored exams, there is no plan in the immediate future to deliver this. So we will still need to go to the Pearson VUE test centers. You have them here in Thailand. I've been to one, in fact, here for a certification I passed here in Bangkok, the GIAC Certified Incident Handling, SANS certification. So the too long didn't read, TLDR, is essentially, whilst the course material largely stays the same, the domains are now talked about in terms of chapters. So there's 8 full chapters with the 8 domains are split across 9 chapters in the new study guide. And I picked these 2 examples out because they show the increase and decrease in weightings. So we can see that communications and network security, surprisingly, has actually dropped in weightings. and software development has increased. Now that's come as a result of surveying everybody through that job task analysis. So this is real world, cutting edge information coming back, and a little surprising, I might add. Perhaps you know some people that already have their CISSP, and I call them 5th editioners because they worked on the earlier version of the syllabus. So how do we talk to them? Simply, it's the same. The domains are the same, but we present them in chapters in a different order. So we're all still studying the same concepts, but the chapter order does mean there's less repetition. I've just put an example on this next slide just to show you how they've changed a lot of the content around. So here you can see what was previously domain 1 that would be presented first in the study guide is now actually all been moved over into chapter 9. So investigations, policies, business continuity, personnel security, risk management, threat modeling, supply chain awareness is all in the back now. It is the last chapter of the study guide. And some things from domain 3, the secure design principles, have now made their way into chapter 1 to be presented first because they're the core concepts that we need to understand in order to pass the exam. So it just shows you how they've made quite substantial changes to where the data is, or where the information is presented from. One thing I found, look, I've been advocating to have privacy added to CIA for some time. And we typically that creates a lot of discussion. And people say, Rob, privacy, it's the same as confidentiality. We're going to call it the same thing. And the example I use is if you think about storing medical records, you could make them confidential. You could, provide the appropriate security controls to keep those medical records confidential. Problem is, you're not allowed to store medical records, nor am I. We're not doctors. So that's kind of the difference between privacy and confidentiality. You could meet the confidentiality requirements, but not meet the privacy requirements. And that's why I always thought it should be split apart. So I was really happy when I heard that CIA was dead and that we were going to have a new model. And I thought it would be CIAP for privacy, but it's not. A lot of other cousins have come along. So it's CIA NAPS, confidentiality, integrity, availability, non-repudiation, authenticity, privacy, and safety. And one of the surprising elements here is safety, because we've probably seen all of the other terms used in our day-to-day jobs, but what's safety doing in there? And so ISC2 has said, look, if the records of your employees were disclosed accidentally or exfiltrated from your network, and those records included the home address, then your family's physical safety is in jeopardy. And so that's what they mean by safety. They're actually talking about physical safety. And in Western Australia, where we have a lot of mining equipment, physical safety is held at one of the highest levels. We need to make sure our staff aren't hurt. So that was an interesting development, the addition to CIA, something I wasn't quite expecting, and I'm really happy to see it in here. It shows that the materials are being updated and really accurate. So I've got some tips in here about those that have maybe studied some of the original materials, or people like yourselves and myself that already have the CISSP. We might be thinking, hey, overall, what's the difference? And I want to say cryptography is about the same amount of detail in there. But the ciphers, the actual crypto ciphers, the algorithms that obfuscate your information and encrypt your information, I should say, there's a bit less information. We used to ask you which ciphers would work for a stream cipher, which ciphers would work as a block cipher. We don't ask you that so much anymore. We're not focusing on that. And you can tell from the study guide where it doesn't focus on that information anymore. There's more information around business continuity and disaster recovery. I'm really happy to see that because I find that's done really, really poorly in the real world. So I'm really happy to see more focus on BCDR. Software-defined networks and software-defined wide area networks. Definitely more information on that. As you might imagine, these are maturing technologies, so we're seeing more and more involvement. Ransomware, of course, is up, as it is always, so there's more information on ransomware. The OSI model, one of my favorites. I studied the OSI model at school, not even high school, and it's still there in all its might, same as it ever was, but a really, really important concept to understand in cybersecurity. There's a lot more software development lifecycle, the whole concept of shifting left. We see that in terms of DevOps and DevSecOps. These are new concepts that are now in our syllabus. In 2018 syllabus, they're not there in much detail. This time we've got several pages on it exploring the concepts of continuous delivery and continuous improvement. Database security surprisingly is up as well, which is interesting. I think after some of the direct attacks on databases, we're seeing more and more interest in this from the CISSP community. Software assurance is up. How do we get assurance on our third-party supply chains? This is a common problem for us all. So there's a lot more content now about how we do that. And there's even more content on that in the Secure Software Lifecycle Developer, the CSSLP certification that ISC2 also offers. Plan, Do, Check, Act, the deeming cycle. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with PDCA. It's actually been put back in. It was taken out in the 2018 syllabus and has now returned in all its glory in our new May 2021 syllabus. And I like Plan, Do, Check, Act. It's a very, very simple model, but it gets us thinking about how do we verify? How do we get that assurance? It's really important. We also see user entity and behavioral analysis, which is sort of coming as a result of the zero trust concepts we're seeing. One of my favorites.
Excuse me, before you move on, I think what we want it to be omitted from the future test is the Bell LaPadula.
One of my favorite security models.
Should we remove
Bell
that for next
LaPadula.
test?
I see Bell LaPadula everywhere. When you go and look at a traffic light, you'll notice that you never see two lights on, right? Always only one. They always control information flow. I love Bell LaPadula. I love, my favorite actually is Clark Wilson.
I guess you're speaking for yourself, but
True.
thank you. Okay, please continue. Sorry for the interruption. Okay.
Bell LaPadula is one of my faves. Bieber. Look, there's always going to be a question on these, so I'm sorry until they take it out. You have to study. But you'll be happy to know they really only focus on Bell LaPadula, and then Bieber is much less information. Clark Wilson even less. Brewer Nash a teensy bit, and the remaining two models are only mentioned by name. So they've made that a little easier. But I think once you explore those security models, you kind of see them everywhere. I tell people it can't be undone. Once you understand Bieber and Bell LaPadula, you'll see it everywhere. So this next slide is just something I threw in. It's what I call my sock drawer, the ISC2 sock drawer. And these are SOC reports, SOC reports. It's not the Secure Operating Center, it's an operational report. And we usually use these for third-party assurance. And so just an example of, I'm not a mind map person, so these are more the maps that I draw. But this is really useful, and I think I need to update the SSA16 is actually changed. But this is the sort of thing you should be doing with complex topics like the SOCs, the SOC reports, because there are different types, different flavors. There's a new SOC for cybersecurity. I haven't actually seen this in the real world yet. People are still giving me SOC 2 Type 2 reports. But if you study this diagram, make some notes, when you get a SOC question, you'll be able to answer it using the information presented here. And I'm sure we could guarantee there's going to be a SOC question as well as a Bell LaPadula. So just a few more updates on what's changed. Backups and continuous data protection, there's a lot more information around that. Most likely because of the ransomware outbreaks, we're really finding a lot of holes in our backup solutions. Crime prevention through environmental design is a new topic area. So how will we design our estates, physically design them to reduce crime? Will we put large hedges out the front, giant shrubs, or will we put tiny little flower pots that will stop a car, but you can reveal an attacker? This is the crime prevention through environmental design. When I did this course, we had to know what color a fire extinguisher was, the red ones for wood and paper, and the different colors. These days, that's not in there anymore. So you'll be happy to know. You don't need to know what color your fire extinguishers need to be. There is a slide on it, but it's very minor detail. Threat modeling using trike and pasta is only mentioned. The threat modeling is largely concerned around attack trees and the stride model from Microsoft. So you need to be aware of that. Zero trust is obviously a new area that's now in the course materials. I'm sad to say architecture has security architecture, particularly enterprise security architecture, is not in the course anymore. It's actually been shifted over to the architecture concentration for CISSP, which is good, but at the same time, the way to win a war is through planning and strategy. We're all at war at the moment with unknown attackers. Sometimes we know them. We need to understand that strategy and planning is a key point of that. And I think by mixing architecture with engineering, we're losing that understanding that planning is the cheapest way to prevent a cyber attack. The controls at the other end, installing firewalls and things, that's the most expensive way to prevent a cyber attack. So I'd like to see more of a concentration on that in the coming update. There's also about the same information in the single loss exposure, annualized loss exposure, the SLE, ALE. We'll have a question coming up on that soon. RAID is there, again from the 60s, from 1960. So there's some old and new in this course, but the RAID are redundant arrays of independent disks. We use them in data centers today with NAND and SSD, still in there. NIST, fog, and MIST computing is two new areas that have been added. And there's a little bit more information on Kerberos and SSO. It would be remiss of me not to mention that there are many different training courses around this region. Some will run in the GMT 10 time zone. Some will run in a +8 time zone. Just have a look around for training courses if you're interested. But there's also a lot of resources. So when we're doing an ISC2 certification, we'll typically purchase the study guide. It's the best guide for the course. And I would recommend you get the most recent one. You've probably got friends out there that already have the older books, maybe back to the 9 or 10 domains back in the day. The problem is if you use those books, you'll be studying material that's not in the current syllabus, and there'll be gaps in that syllabus. They won't be mentioning MIST and fog computing, for instance. So try and get the updated guide. It's the one thing that I think is absolutely critical. It means you can go and review other materials, and if somebody says to you, oh, here's a question on which cipher works as a stream or a block cipher, you can go back to your study guide and say, it's not in the new syllabus. I will ignore it. I will avoid that. And that will help you stay on the path, because it's really, really fun, I found, to jump off the path and go swimming and learn about, perfect forward secrecy for hashing. And it's not in the exam. It's fascinating to know, helpful in our industry to understand it, but not in the exam. So by all means, go swimming in those areas, but just be aware of what's going to be in the syllabus and what's not. And the way you'll know is by using the glossary in the back of the study guide. That will tell you if these key terms are in the glossary, then you know they're going to be in the content, which means they'll be in the exam. Look, there's also the ISC2 community, which is great. Our chapters, which are really wonderful ways to network and ask questions. We have ISC2 study groups. So this is a group you can create yourself or within your chapter, and I recommend doing it within the Bangkok chapter. And we'll talk more about study groups shortly. There's also some ISC2 forums, and you can purchase a bank of questions from ISC2. And a lot of people like to start on the questions and work back. they'll answer questions until they get something wrong, and then they'll go and research that topic. We call that the bottom-up study, where you start with the questions and work back to the information. Most people, well, 70% of people go the other way, where they'll read the material, and then at the end of the material, they'll sit the exam questions. Whatever you do, don't waste the questions. Once you've answered them, they're kind of in here. And it's easy to keep answering the question right when you've seen it 5 times and you know the right answer. So don't waste the questions. Try and use them when and where you need them, because they're valuable. Now, there are more questions available online. And I have to say, as a certified ISC2 instructor, we don't promote grey market materials, and mainly because they're usually out of date and they won't cover what's in the new syllabus. So question banks, YouTube videos, mind maps and flashcards, these are all really great places to go and get additional study, but don't make them your primary source. And look, I happen to know of one question bank I looked at, and it asked questions on Orange Book and Red Book and a whole lot of really old, the Rainbow series of books from the US military. And I was talking to my instructor at the time, and I said, hey, I noticed the syllabus, the 2018, an earlier syllabus, didn't mention the Rainbow series. And the instructor told me it hasn't been in there for 20 years. So be very careful. That's why I say help or hinder. Will these questions help you, or will they throw you off the path and lead you down the wrong path? Because our brain is only so big. For the exam, we really need to focus on that content. So let's drill into the study groups. And this is my pro tip for the day. This is the big takeaway, is around the study groups. So let's just talk about the logistics. Pretty much, we'll create a study group. We try and keep them small, maybe around 2 to 10 people in each group. If you have 30 people that want to study, then let's have 3 separate groups. We should choose a communications platform to study by. So I've seen people choose Discord or Skype even, LinkedIn. There's a number of different platforms. We just need to consolidate and pick one for our group of 10 people. So, it's really important that that platform be accessible easily. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. I also think it's really important to have a facilitator, because you'll find discussion in those forums quickly goes off topic. Quickly start talking about the football, or the local sports games, or some ransomware attack, and we forget that this is a study group. Those conversations can go offline into another area. We want to sort of keep focusing on study, otherwise we'll lose our way. So a group facilitator will help keep the group online. So I want to talk now about sample questions. The thing is, like I said before, there are many grey market question banks available, but they're out of date. They contain questions that are no longer in the syllabus. They are missing questions that are in the syllabus. So we need to be very careful of those stores of questions. And there are thousands and thousands of questions available out there that are off topic and will send you off the path. ISC2 have some questions of their own that you can purchase as part of the question bank, but I think it's only about 150 questions, which is good. But if you're doing the bottom-up study, you might want more. And I recommend make more questions, because the questions really let you hone your skills and will force you to understand the concepts through the questions. And so that's why in the study group, we ask that students make their own questions and submit those questions back to the rest of the group. Now, there you go. If we've got 10 people and they're creating 1 question a week, we've got 10 free questions a week coming in. This is highly valuable to us. And we know that those questions will be on topic and will be useful. So we have some rules around this. But firstly, let's talk more about writing questions. What do you think it does? We write a question, we think about the question, we give the questions to our other students, and they can answer the question. So we get free questions for the group participants, and that's free revision, and that's really useful. And we get a lot of discussion around that as well. So we have free revision questions, but you know what? That is not the best value. That's only 20%. If you write me a question and I answer it in the group, great. That gives me one question. But do you know what? When you create the questions, when you actually write the question yourself, you're going through the process that the instructor is doing. That's how ISC2 makes the questions. They find a page in the book, they review the content, they create the question, they create one valid answer and 3 false answers. When you do this yourself, you're actually exploring both sides of the coin. Yes, you're choosing a correct answer. You know what the answer is, you're going to write it there. But you're also going to put 3 false answers. And you, as the author of the question, will understand why are they false. And that's a key point, is understanding not just what's correct, but what's wrong. And so by making the questions, you get to understand both sides. So I would say 80% of the value is actually in creating the question, and only 20% of the value in answering the question. So the key for these groups is to create the questions, right? You know, answering them is limited value. Creating them is 80% of the value. And it will help gamify the process. It will help encourage your team and help them try and make hard questions for you back. So the rules here are fairly simple. Student questions must provide a reference in the guide. I don't want a question that I can't point to a page and say that's the answer. So the rule we have with this concept is that you must be able to point to a page number in the official study guide. It's on page 323, chapter 4. That's what the rule is. You can't say the answers in the media or the answers in my secret notes. It's got to be in the book. The other rule is you must make the questions as hard as you possibly can while still observing point number 1. And if you make them as hard as you possibly can, then you are actually going through the same process ISC2 is doing. And those are the most difficult questions the computer adaptive testing will give you. So you're going to follow the same process the instructor follow, or the examiners follow when they create the questions. Do you know what happens next? Because you're following the same process, there's around a 40% crossover. So if you created 100 questions yourself, you're likely going to find 40 of those in the exam. So that's the secret. That's the secret. Create the questions yourself. Get that crossover. When you go and sit the exam, not only will you know the answer to the question, but you'll know why all the other answers are wrong. You'll find exact copies of the questions you've created in there. It happened to me when I did it. I thought they'd copied my question because we'd both read the same page. We'd both built the same set of answers. And so it was easy. That difficult question became a 10 second. I knew the answer. And I knew all the answers because I'd made 100 questions. And from there, I just needed 30 more questions to get over that 70%, and then I'm through. So that's the secret for the CISSP, the CCSP, the CSSLP, SAPSA, any other certification you're doing. Make your own questions. Have a group that you can send them to so you can discuss the questions. Sometimes you can get them wrong, so it's great to have that feedback. But that's my key takeaway. Make the questions and understand when you're making those questions why their answers are right and wrong. That's the big takeaway. So I've just got 2 sample questions here for the last slide. Just really, these are real examples that we built in study groups together. And so I'll warn you, the one on the left is a little bit of a trickster. And I've got some ISC2 socks to give away to the correct answers to the people here in the room today. So the first question, which cryptographic property provides assurance that the sender, let me try again, which cryptographic property provides assurance, the sender with assurance, I've got that wrong, that the recipient will not be able to prove who the sending party was. So which cryptographic concept ensures that the recipient cannot prove? It's a cannot question. Be careful, I didn't underline it. And this is a really good example of the English language working against you if it's not your first language, because there's a not hidden in there. Plus on top of everything, I put assurance in there twice. It happens. So, do we have any suggestions from the audience? Which of these will not, which will allow the receiving party to disagree and say they didn't receive?
Okay. If you want to answer the question, I will bring you the microphone. And this one is for the IC2 official SOC. Okay. If you didn't get the answer right, we give you one, right?
You only get
Not
one
the
SOC.
pair.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Oh, someone will try this, so I'll bring the microphone. Anyone? คุณอารยะ
E, is that correct?
Correct.
Is it B? Repudiation?
That's correct.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Okay, and the second question, which if you've studied the materials, you'll know the acronym ALE fairly quickly, annualized loss expectancy. Which of these formulas is correct? Now, they might give you the formula in the exam. They say they do, but sometimes they'll ask you really curly questions around it. So it's worth trying to understand which of these it is. Now, I've made this, well, the study group made this quite difficult by changing the order of the formula a little. So we've got, is it the asset value times the exposure factor times the annualized rate of occurrence? Is that ALE? Or is it the asset value plus the annualized rate of occurrence divided by the exposure factor, which gives us the ALE? Or is ALE equal to the asset value times the single loss exposure? Or is ALE equal to the annualized rate of occurrence divided by the single loss exposure? So these are written in quite a complex way, and they're reusing the concepts. Well, we have an answer.
Yes. You want to try?
Value into exposure factor into the annualized occurrence will be the ALE. Rest all is false.
That's correct. Congratulations. Okay, so those are just two examples of questions we built. You'll see these in the exam or something similar. That's the whole concept. Write your own questions, and then you take all the surprises away from the exam. You know what's in there, and you'll walk out after 100 minutes. And thank you very much. That's my presentation. You're welcome to email me if you have any questions.
Okay, so thank you very much, Rob, for the great presentation and insightful information. Let me give a short summary in Thai so that we can recap everything. Okay, and also, just to let you know, we make things simpler by providing caption on Facebook Live as well. And your English is very good because many people expecting it to be difficult because you came from down under, but it turned out to be very easy to listen to. Okay, so besides all the updates, which most people really like, from what I'm monitoring, is the CAA naps. Okay, so if you think about CAA and the napping, so it might be easier. Yes. โอเคครับก็เดี๋ยวขอแคปในส่วนของสิ่งที่เขาได้พูดไปหลายๆข้อนะครับก็วิธีในการที่จะเรียนรู้ของเรามันทำได้หลายทางนะครับบางท่านก็จะชอบที่จะอ่านทั้งหมดก่อนแล้วก็ไปดูข้อสอบนะครับแต่หลายท่านอันนี้ประสบการณ์ส่วนตัวเลยเราจะดูข้อสอบก่อนเลยแล้วก็ไปดูว่าทำไมถึงตอบถูกทำไมถึงตอบผิดนะครับในส่วนของคำถามประเภทที่เป็น bottom up มันมีคีย์เวิร์ดอันหนึ่งที่เขาเตือนก็คือว่าอย่าไปทำให้เสียของความหมายก็คือถ้าเกิดว่ามันมีคำถามแล้วมีคำตอบแล้วเนี่ยครั้งแรกที่เรารู้ว่าเราตอบถูกหรือตอบผิดเราควรไปรีเสิร์ชก่อนเลยว่าเหตุผลคืออะไรเพราะการที่เราจะมาทบทวนคำถามคำตอบโดยการที่ทำมัน 5-6 ครั้งเนี่ยมันทำให้ เกิดการเรียนรู้แค่เรื่องความจำแต่มันไม่ได้ทำให้เกิดความเข้าใจนะครับเพราะฉะนั้นนั่นคือประเด็นแรกนะครับที่อยากจะฝากไว้นอกเหนือจากเนื้อหาอื่นที่ค่อนข้างจะตรงๆอยู่แล้วก็คือการอัปเดตว่าโดเมนไหนตอนไหนตอนนี้อะไรสูงต่ำยังไงบ้างนะครับนี่ก็เป็นเรื่องของเทคนิคการเรียนรู้ที่ถ้าเกิดเราดำเนินการตัวนี้เนี่ยในการเตรียมตัวนะครับเรื่องของ test bank หรือคำถามนะครับเป็นสิ่งที่สำคัญกับอีกประเด็นหนึ่งคือการเลือกนะครับคือถ้าเมื่อไหร่เราเลือกไปดาวน์โหลดพวกแหล่งที่เขาบอกว่าเป็นข้อสอบแล้วก็ที่เขาใช้คำว่า gray market ก็คือพวกข้อสอบในอดีตพวกนี้ส่วนใหญ่บางครั้งมันเก่ามากเก่าซะจนเราอ่านไปก็เปลืองในเรื่องของเวลาที่เสียไปแต่เป็นสิ่งที่ไม่ได้มาใช้ประโยชน์นะครับเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยเวลาดูในเรื่องของตัวอย่างข้อสอบก็ต้องเริ่มต้นจากการที่ดูก่อนว่าโดเมนไหนเนี่ยเขาเน้นเนื้อหาแบบไหนบ้างแล้วก็ดูที่มันแมทช์กันของเก่าไปเนี่ยอาจจะไม่ได้ทำให้เกิดประโยชน์อะไรเลยนะครับในเรื่องของการเตรียมตัวของเรานะครับกับอีกอันหนึ่งเนี่ยซึ่งเป็นเหมือนกับ secret sauce ของเขาก็คือว่าควรจะรวมตัวกันเป็น study group นะครับตอนนี้ส่วนของเราเนี่ยก็เริ่มมีบ้างนะครับก็คือตัวกลุ่มของ candidate ที่มีอยู่ประมาณ500กว่าคนนะครับเพราะฉะนั้นจำนวน500กว่าคนของเรานี่จะเกินกว่าที่เขาแนะนำกลุ่มละ10คนไปนิดหน่อยนะครับเขาจะแนะนำกลุ่มละ10คนของเรามีกลุ่มละ500นะครับแต่นี้ก็อาจจะต้องไปลองดูนะครับว่าเราจะฟอร์มทีมยังไงเพราะว่าในการฟอร์มทีมและทำ study group เนี่ยนะครับความยากของมันก็คือว่าทำยังไงจะให้ทุกคน contribute นะครับแล้วหนึ่งในสิ่งที่ทุกคนจะต้องร่วม contribute ที่เขาแนะนำเพิ่มเติมจากการที่จะอ่านและอธิบายไปเรื่อยๆก็คือเรื่องการทดลองทำคำถามเองนะครับคือเราเลือกมาว่าวันนี้เราจะเอาท็อปิกไหนนะครับเสร็จแล้วเราก็มาดูว่าจากท็อปิกนั้นหัวข้อนั้นจะมาแปลงเป็นคำถามอย่างไรบ้างนะครับโดยที่คำถามนั้นจะต้องมีการอ้างอิงที่ชัดเจนจากตัวหนังสือที่เป็น Official เลยนะครับอย่าไปเอาอะไรที่บังเอิญอ่านเจอในอินเทอร์เน็ตมีในข่าวแบบนี้แล้วก็แปลงเป็นคำถามโดยที่ข้อมูลเนี่ยอาจจะไม่สามารถ refer ไปที่ Official ได้เพราะว่าไม่งั้นแล้วตอนเอามาฝึกใช้งานทดลองถามตอบกันเนี่ยมันจะทำให้คนที่เลือกแล้วเห็นไม่ตรงกับคุณเนี่ยอาจจะกังขาเยอะเพราะรู้สึกว่าตกลงแล้วมาไงนะครับแต่ถ้าเกิดเราย้อนกลับไปแล้วก็พูดคุยกันได้ว่านี้มาจากหน้าที่320นะครับแล้วพอเห็นคำถามบวกคำตอบแล้วเข้าใจนะครับตรงนี้มันก็จะเสริมสร้างในเรื่องของการเตรียมตัวให้มากกว่าเดิมนะครับเพราะว่าในกระบวนการที่เราเตรียมตัวสอบเนี่ยนอกเหนือจากการที่เราทำตัวเหมือนเป็นคนสอบก็คืออ่านแล้วก็พยายามไปสอบนะครับอีกมุมหนึ่งก็คือทำตัวเหมือนกับว่าเราจะเป็นคนออกข้อสอบเองนะครับแล้วเราก็จะเข้าใจ mindset ของการที่จะออกข้อสอบว่าจะต้องดูเนื้อหาจากตรงไหนนะครับแนวทางวิเคราะห์จะเป็นแบบใดนะครับแล้วมันก็จะทำให้การเรียนรู้ของเรานะครับประสบความสำเร็จในการที่จะไปสอบให้ได้ง่ายขึ้นนะครับซึ่งตัวนี้นี่ก็เหมือนเขามาแชร์ในส่วนของ secret sauce ของเขาที่มีส่วนทำให้เขาส่งเสริมให้เกิด study group ของนักเรียนเขาแล้วนักเรียนเขาก็นำแนวทางนี้ไปปฏิบัตินะครับทำให้นักเรียนของเราประสบความสำเร็จนะครับสิ่งหนึ่งที่อยากย้ำก็คือว่าในทั้งหมดที่เขาพูดมาเนี่ยมันจะต้องมีการออกแรงของคนที่จะไปสอบด้วยที่จะต้องรวมตัวกัน study ร่วมกันแล้วก็มาทดลองออกข้อสอบกันนะครับแล้วมันถึงจะประสบความสำเร็จนะครับถ้าเกิดว่ารอให้รอเป็นคนถามเหมือนเดิมนะครับคำถามมาจากอาจารย์เหมือนเดิมเนี่ยนะครับผลลัพธ์มันอาจจะไม่ได้ออกมาเป็นแบบนี้นะครับเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยทุกคนต้องช่วยกัน contribute นะครับในเรื่องของการทำ study group ด้วยนะครับแต่ขอเรียนว่าเป็นสิ่งที่จำเป็นจริงๆแล้วก็หลายๆที่หลายๆประเทศถึงแม้ว่าอาจจะยังไม่ได้มีเทคนิคเรื่องของการจะตั้งคำถามด้วยตัวเองเนี่ยนะครับแต่ก็ต้องมี study group ที่อยู่ใกล้ชิดกันในแง่ที่กระตุ้นกันและกันด้วยนะครับซึ่งมันจะช่วยได้นะครับตรงนี้ก็ขออนุญาตเปรียบเทียบไปก็เหมือนกับเราพยายามลดน้ำหนักเองกับจ้างเทรนเนอร์นะครับการที่มีเทรนเนอร์ก็เหมือนมีเพื่อนที่มีเป้าหมายร่วมกับเรานะครับเขาก็จะคอยกระตุ้นเราในการที่จะพยายามแอคทีฟในเรื่องนี้แม้ว่าบางช่วงการเตรียมตัวสอบมันจะยาวนานนะครับแล้วใช้เวลาเนี่ยแต่ถ้าเกิดมีเพื่อนร่วมทางไปกับเรานะฮะมีความสนิทสนมที่จะมีเป้าหมายร่วมแล้วก็แชร์ร่วมกันเนี่ยโอกาสสำเร็จมันก็จะง่ายขึ้นนะครับนั่นก็เป็นส่วนที่จะเพิ่มเติมให้กับทุกท่านนะครับ so once again Rob thank you very much for the presentation you understood what I'm saying, right? Okay, for most of it, right? Okay.
Completely.
Okay, great. So no need to translate into English. Okay. So I just kept up from what you have shared with us, and I think it's very valuable. Hopefully, we will have some more study group to prepare for the ICSP test. Okay. And also, any other Q&A or question from Facebook Live or Zoom? If there's any, please send it to me. Oh, great. Please allow them to turn on the microphone and then share the opinion or questions.
ฝากผมชื่อไพรัตน์นะครับฝากเรียนถามล็อบว่าขอคอมเมนต์กับข้อสอบของอย่างเลิร์นแซบของ ISC2 แล้วก็โบซอนแล้วก็ทอขอคอมเมนต์เขาหน่อยว่าเขาเห็นว่าคำถามที่3สำนักนี้เขามีความคอมเมนต์ยังไงบ้าง
ขอ3สำนักมีอะไรบ้างนะครับโบสันทอและอะไรกันนะครับ
ก็ของ ISC2 เนี่ยครับผมที่เป็นแอปพลิเคชันนะครับ
โบสันแล้วก็ทอใช่ไหมครับ
ครับผม
Okay. This question for you. How do you compare the quality of IC2 practice Q&A? And the last one is for which one do you think quality or which one you like the most?
Yeah, it comes back to what I was saying. The questions from other sources may not be up to date. They may not have taken out the old questions that are not in the exam. Only ISC2 knows the full syllabus. So those other companies that were mentioned, they don't know. They're guessing what's in the exam. Perhaps they talked to someone who sat the exam. Perhaps they've bought the book and have tried to understand. But with caution. Yes, you can use those. The quality of questions is generally okay, but you need to make sure that they're on topic because they can lead you off topic very quickly. And it's, they say it's a mile wide. We don't want to make it 2 miles wide or 3 miles. It's too much to learn, right? And also the ISC2 questions in the book, in the study guide, they're typically easier than those that you'll find in the exam. And the reason they're easier is so that you don't give up on chapter 1. So in the book, when you're going through the study guide, the questions in there are some of the easier ones, the ones that you will find in the question bank. And I saw there was a question on this. The ISC2 question bank is something you could purchase from ISC2. Go to their website and search for study materials for CISSP. Those questions are more difficult, but it comes back to our study group. If we make our study group questions as difficult as we possibly can, then there can be no more difficult. And you are looking at the most difficult questions. And if you get them all right, you're going to get kicked out at 100 minutes with what we call a near perfect score, because that's the only way to find out what your score is. If you fail, they'll tell you what you get. But if you pass, they will not tell you. But you can tell by the minutes, how many minutes long was your exam. That's the closest you'll get. So yeah, the resources are good, but you need to make sure they're still on topic.
Okay,
Are you saying that ISC2 question is enough?
Look, I don't think so. It kind of depends on your learning style. If you can read and absorb the information from the book and then just do the sample questions, okay, that's your style. For me, I would recommend the study group and make questions. If you don't have a study group, that's fine. Make your own questions. You'll get more out of making them than you will out of answering them. So a short version is no, I think you need more questions than those that are in the book. I think you need more.
Okay. Thank you.
that's a really good point. So someone in the audience, sorry, said that the you've got to understand why the question is wrong, as the answers are wrong, as well as why the answer is correct. And so that's that two sides of the coin thing. And when you study the study guide, it'll ask you a set of questions, and then in the answers, it will discuss why one answer was right. And it's easy to just stop at that point, but you shouldn't, as the participant has said, you should go and read the full paragraph and understand why the other ones were wrong. And that's the process you'll go through when you build your own questions. Because writing down the question and the answer is actually some of the easier bits. It's finding 3 wrong answers that look right. That's the tricky bit. And believe me, that's where you learn. And that's exactly what the examiners are doing. And that's where you'll find 40% crossover. And so the exam, no surprises, in and out.
ก็ขออนุญาตสรุปเพิ่มเติมนะครับก็คือว่าในเรื่องของแหล่งของคำถามนะครับที่จะเป็น sample question เนี่ยนะครับก็หลายๆแหล่งก็คงจะเป็นเรื่องดีนะครับแต่ที่คุณร็อบเป็นห่วงคือถ้าเกิดไม่ใช่ของ official แล้วมีโอกาสว่าเขาอาจจะคาดเดานะครับว่าคำถามนี้น่าจะใช่นะครับแล้วถ้าเกิดจำนวนของคำถามที่มันมีความหลากหลายแต่ว่าไม่ตรงกับความต้องการของ ISC2 เนี่ยนะครับบางทีมันอาจจะทำให้มันมีหัวข้อที่เราต้องเข้าไปดูหรือว่าเข้าไปศึกษามากเกินกว่าที่จะเป็นโฟกัสของ IC2 นะครับแต่ทั้งนี้ไม่ได้หมายความว่าเพราะฉะนั้นใช้แค่ตัวอย่างข้อสอบของ IC2 อย่างเดียวเท่านั้นคือพอนะครับเพราะว่าตรงนั้นเนี่ยมันก็คือแค่ตัวอย่างนะครับแต่มุมของการออกแบบโจทย์อาจจะมีได้หลากหลายมากกว่านั้นนะครับซึ่งในความหลากหลายเนี่ยเราจะได้ก็คือเราต้องลองฝึกในการที่จะตั้งคำถามเองอันนี้ก็จะดีที่สุดนะครับแต่ถ้าตรงนั้นไม่มีก็คงจะต้องดูแนวทางอื่นๆนะอย่างเช่นแม้กระทั่งบริษัทหรือทอก็อาจจะมาดูประกอบได้นะครับแต่ว่าอย่าทิ้งในส่วนของที่จะเป็น IC2 ในส่วนของที่เป็น body of knowledge นะครับในส่วนที่จะเป็น sample exam นะครับตรงนั้นคงจะต้องเป็นจุดเริ่มต้นที่ทุกคนจะต้องเริ่มก่อนที่จะ add on ด้วยตัวอย่างของข้อสอบที่จะเป็น third party นะครับจะได้สามารถไปในทิศทางที่ถูกต้องได้นะครับมีคำถามอื่นไหมครับเดี๋ยวส่งมาในไลน์ตรงนี้เดี๋ยวช่วยนะฮะครับ I think we may have 3 questions.
Okay, so yes, all the questions in the exam are in the study guide, the official study guide from ISC2. Make sure you have the correct version. That's it. And so the glossary is your roadmap. And do make sure you review the glossary. You should be able to talk about each of the concepts in the glossary for 2 or 3 minutes. You should understand them. If there's something in there you don't quite understand, that's a sign that you should go and review it. For people who are already CISSP and are looking to generate CPEs, there are a number of webinars on the ISC2 website. So you can go and watch those webinars and they'll log your CPEs. I'm a bit of a conference junkie. I love conferences. So every time you go to a conference, every hour you're at the conference is 1 CPE. If you're studying a certification of any kind, the entire course is claimable as a CPE. If you're a member of a professional body other than the ISC2 chapter, I'm a member of ASA, the Australian Information Security Associates. Just being a board member gives you all of the CPEs you need. But look, I guess that's the technical answer. The real answer is that you should be partaking in the industry. You should be reading about industry events. You should be across this stuff. If that's your job, it's probably force-fed to you on a daily basis. You're probably sick of ransomware reviews and articles, and yet we still must read them. So I think the simple way to do this is to watch ISC squared webinars. The more complex way is to go and partake in the industry and get down and dirty at the conferences and at networking events to learn and understand. And just remember, each hour you're at one of these events equates to 1 CPE. You need around 30 per year, and that ends up being about 90 in the claimable period. But you'll find if you're in this industry with me and everyone else here, you'll find it's quite easy to create those CPEs. I think the difficulty is in logging them. That's the time-consuming bit when you have to go to the website. And they do audit, so you do need to be careful. When you claim you attended an event, you should try and get some evidence. I sometimes take a photo, or if I'm an attendee at a conference, I'll take my conference badge and I'll keep it. And I hang them on the back of a door, and then every time I need to do CPEs, I look up the name of the conference, take a photo of the badge to show I was there, and I've not had any problems. So, yeah, a few different ways there.
Okay, so I think that's answer one of the question regarding the one that passed exam. How do they stay current and update? I think maybe that's why they need us to fill in the CPE credit, because they want us to continue to study. Okay, and there's so many ways, like Rob said, you can study online and take a course and fill in. And during COVID, that's what I did. I collect so many CPE credit by studying online because there's nothing else to do. And for me, it's so easy to choose the one with the certification at the end. And quite a few, they already the number of credit that I will get. I upload the JPEG or PDF files and fill in the CP credit and get credit for that. Okay, but also if you go to a conference, especially the long one, you will get a lot of credits. If you choose many of the sessions to join in, that's how you improve yourself. But not just that, you can read the book, okay, and get the CPE credit. Okay, or join after you have a membership on ISC Square. There's a lot of webinar that you can enjoy as well, and a lot of courses, which is from what I remember. If you are not a member, it's like $200 or $300 per courses, but it's free for ISC Square members. So there's so many ways for you to fulfill the requirement in terms of update your knowledge, and also the requirement for CPE credits. Okay, so that's a good question. But the other one is a question about, can we reduce the price for CSP exam? But it's not our. It will be that would be our wish, but it's not for us to answer. Okay, I think it's about the right time for this meeting. Is there any? Okay, okay. So before closing remark, I would like to thank you, Rob, so much for the in-depth knowledge that you have shared with us. Okay, so please greet Rob around the round of applause, please, from the audience at home and also the audience here as well. Okay, so thank you so much. Okay, and you still stay with us, right? Okay, just in case that some other questions are coming up. Okay. And for now, I would like to give you the update on our CSP program. Right now, we are at the stage of provide IC Square official courses for all 60 persons already. And we are quite glad that most of them joined the whole 5-day courses on site, which right now, it might be the same with you. It's so hard to get people out of their homes for the whole 5 days and join the on-site courses. Okay. What we find difficult is that to make the course engaging, because we choose those 60 persons out of the talent pool of 1,200. So it's really challenging for the instructor to keep the course interesting. You cannot read off the slide at all. They will complain, and they did complain. so we have to change the instructor in the mid of the courses, but luckily the last one we choose is he's all right, so we don't have to replace the new guys. Okay, and on the 5 to 9 of September, we will provide a further instruction in a tutorial manner. So hopefully there will be some good questions and answers from the instructor, and after this there might be the Q&As or some sample question from the student as well to make it more engaging. Okay, and after that there will be another month for preparation, and then we will take the exam for the whole 60 persons. Okay. Okay. So right now, is there any other questions from Facebook and Zoom? Okay. But the thing is, right now we still have pairs of socks to give away. Okay. So we right now we only have a Q&A from Zoom audience. So we need more engagement from the people from Facebook as well. So the people on Facebook, please be prepared. We will give you some questions, and then you have to answer. But Rob, I need your help on this. We need A or B multiple choice question for the Facebook audience.
Okay.
Okay. A or B multiple
Yeah.
choice.
So I was engaged with a bank, and the bank found that their help desk, well, essentially the bank was having their customers were being robbed, their homes were being robbed. So they said, so they found out, the police investigated, and they found out that the people running the help desk had access to both the address and the bank balance of each of the bank's customers. So they could tell how much money they had and, you know, where they lived. And so they were passing that information on to the burglars. So the bank implemented a security control where once you accessed the bank balance, you could never see the home address. Or once you accessed the home address of the customer, you could never see the bank balance. They created a wall, a Chinese wall, right? The Chinese wall model. What I'm looking for the correct answer here is what is the official name of the Chinese wall security model?
โอเคครับ อะไรคือชื่อที่เป็นทางการของ Chinese Wall Model ครับเดี๋ยวถ้าเป็น multiple choice จะง่ายไปเพราะฉะนั้นใครตอบได้นะครับผ่านอันนี้ให้สำหรับทาง Facebook นะครับพิมพ์คำตอบมาแล้วถูกต้องเป็นคนแรกทบทวนเรื่องสถานการณ์นะครับคือในสถานการณ์สมมุตินี้นะครับมีคนในธนาคารนะครับพนักงานนี้เห็นหมดทั้งยอดเงินนะครับแล้วก็ที่อยู่ด้วยนะครับก็ปรากฏว่าเป็น insider คือรู้ว่าใครรวยปุ๊บก็เอาที่อยู่ส่งให้โจรโจรก็ไปปล้นบ้านอันนี้ธนาคารก็เลยป้องกันปัญหานี้โดยการแยกกันว่าถ้าเกิดใครได้เห็นเงินบาลานซ์ก็จะไม่สามารถดูได้ว่าบ้านอยู่ที่ไหนใครดูว่าบ้านอยู่ที่ไหนก็จะไม่สามารถเห็นยอดเงินบาลานซ์ได้นะครับซึ่งตัวนี้เนี่ยเปรียบเทียบไปก็เหมือนกับ Chinese Wall หรือว่าโมเดลกำแพงเมืองจีนนะครับแต่ว่าคำถามคือชื่อที่เป็นทางการนะครับของ Chinese Wall Model คือคำว่าอะไรครับ Oh we got two choices okay so to make it more interesting the first choice is Brewer and Nash and the second one is Clark Wilson model which one is correct
Brewer Nash is correct.
okay so we got the right answers คุณสุรกิจเดี๋ยวจะมีคนติดต่อไปหลังใหม่นะครับพิมพ์ไว้ได้เลยครับแต่ความรู้สึกเหมือนไลฟ์ขายของเลยมีพิมพ์ปักหมุดปักหมุดแคปเจอร์หน้าจอ เดี๋ยวปักหมุดแคปเจอร์หน้าจอมาเลยนะครับคุณสุรกิจตอบถูกเป็นคนแรกครับยอดเยี่ยมมากครับ สำหรับท่านที่ตอบคลาร์กกับวิลสันนี่ได้คะแนนความแปลกแต่ไม่มีของจะแจกให้นะครับ ครับโอเคครับงั้นก็ขอบคุณมากครับครับครับครับระหว่างนี้นะครับเดี๋ยวเราจะมีการตอบแบบสอบถามนะ there will be a survey question at the end เดี๋ยวนี้เดี๋ยวก็จะขึ้น QR code ให้นะครับอ่าตอนนี้ก็จะขออนุญาตมอบของที่ระลึกนะครับให้กับคุณรอบนะครับแล้วก็หลังจากนั้นก็จะขึ้น QR code นะสุดท้ายก็จะเป็นclosing remark นะครับ Okay. So now we will, would like to ask our chapter president to give a souvenir to Mr. Rob as the token of our appreciation. Okay. Please. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. At the end, I would like to invite our okay. Thank you so much, Rob, and thank you so much, Pop. Okay. So now I think it's time for closing remark from our IC Square Bangkok chapter president, please.
Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you all our precious member. Right now, our Bangkok chapter has been registered as part of the Thailand law. So we have already established our chapter so far fully legally under Thai law. And thank you very much for all the chapter member that supports us until now. And our greatest remarks today, this event has become real because we have got an assistant from Rob, which came from the IC Square Western Australia chapter, and also Piedmont that has really give us a very generous that we can use the location here at the NCSA Sogomosho in Thailand to be the one that we have the official chapter meeting event today. And please continue to support our chapter. And also thank you very much for all the chapter management that has made this event become real also. And we will continue to have the good and attractive the event in the future. And we'll make sure that we more collaborate with you guys, and we welcome all our chapter member to let's say encourage all the security enthusiasts and anyone who interested in security, cyber security, information security, any kind of security based on the digital world to join us, our chapter. And also please support Western Australia Chartering chapter and any other IC Square chapter under the IC Square Global. And we encourage all you guys to continue pursuing to build up your own profession. And also if you really can pay attention and can donate all your time to study on the CSSP certification under IC Square, which you guys already know that it's a very hard one to grab it, to get certified. not because we are not good or we are not expert in cybersecurity. And as Rob's session has guided you guys, right? We lack the ability to understand this kind of English that is a very big problem to all Thais and maybe other foreigners that didn't use English as a native language. All the questions that you guys will be facing in their exam right now, most of them are psychological exams, psychological question. And if you miss only one single phrase or single word, it's very hard for you to pass the exam and get certified. But if you continue pursuing it and spend your time, donate part of your time or putting very much effort into pursuing the certification. CSP is a gold standard and certification in cybersecurity, and you can be a differentiator. You can differentiate your career, and you can be the top level management in terms of cybersecurity in Thailand and in any other place in the world. Let's say that every effort that you has spent, right? You can grab a big rewards after that. But if you think that maybe CSP is too hard for you at the moment, we still encourage you to move on for the kind of static exam like CCSP, Certified Cloud Security Professional. It will be the one that is a good start for all you guys to get certified and be a ISC2 global member, because the question type is a static question type and it's much easier compared to the psychological test question like CSSP, and you can get the world-renowned certification based on ISC2 also. So if you think that CSP is not at the moment, pursuing CCSP would be a good choice for you. And thank you very much for attending this session, and we hope we see you guys again in the near future in the chapter event. Let's wait for the interesting event to come in a good in a good moment in the near future. Thank you very much and good luck.
ครับขอบคุณทุกท่านมากๆครับครับอันนี้ก็ขอจบเซสชันพิเศษของเราในวันนี้นะครับขอบคุณทุกคนครับเดี๋ยวคราวหน้าเจอกันใหม่ครับสวัสดีครับสวัสดีครับ